course. Am I doing okay? You can hear me?
Can you hear back there?
Okay. I can actually remove this one. Ah. Yeah, I can go around. Oh. Okay, let's start here and see how it goes. I wonder, can I now say that I've shared the stage with Red Skelton? Okay, that's not stretching the truth too much. Very good. Well, we saw a couple of videos here initially, and especially the one on American exceptionalism, I think was very apt as an introduction to my speech. I will actually be able to save you a few minutes here, cutting out a couple of things, because I had some quotes that were pretty much repeated up here in the video. Now, I think it provided a good summary in the sense that people have very different opinions about what American exceptionalism is. Pretty much you can make up your own definition. Yes, we saw some of the things that I definitely agree with up here, with the freedom, with the liberty, etc. But as we also saw our president, he has a slightly different opinion or view of exceptionalism. I mean, after all, we're exceptional, but so are the French and the Germans and the Egyptians and everybody else, right? If everybody's exceptional, then nobody's exceptional. So, what if anything makes America exceptional in a good way? What if anything sets America apart from all other nations, from all other peoples? What makes us different compared to my native Sweden, my wife's native Germany, and all other European countries, or for that matter, all other countries around the world? I think, at the very core, at the foundation, it is best captured by the Declaration of Independence, and more specifically, the individual's unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why? Because the Declaration provides the most profoundly moral statement that has ever been put forth in defense of liberty and freedom. Never before in history and never after has a nation been founded on an idea. If you think about it, all other nations, they are some haphazard mix of geography or ethnicity or cultural bond or something like that. But America, we were funding on an idea. And it's not just any idea, it is a moral idea. Each individual's unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is a remarkable accomplishment. Most people think of the Declaration as a political document. I mean, sure, it has vast political implications and ramifications, but first and foremost, I see it as a moral document. It tells us what fundamental rights we have, and by implication, that also means what is wrong. Right, wrong, good, bad. That is really the essence of morality. The Declaration was born out of a mindset that was truly exceptional, truly American. It is a mindset that, as Michael mentioned in the introduction, is slowly, or I believe is slowly disappearing. But it is still largely present in Americans, and we can definitely see it in the Tea Party movement of today. One of the few encouraging signs, actually. Now, in order to better appreciate this, and I'm going to take this one out, let's contrast it with Europe a little bit. And what I will offer here are some broad generalizations, cultural trends, if you like. You have to remember that they are generalizations. There are individuals over there who are Americans in mind. They would love to come here, many of them. We may not let them in. And correspondingly here, we have a lot of people who are European in mind. As I go through my examples, you'll probably tell yourself, or say to yourself, you know, I see a lot of people who are like that around here. And you'll be right. And that's part of the slow decline that we unfortunately are seeing. So first, Americans believe on some level that the government should rightly be the servant of the people. Europeans, their fundamental belief is that the individual is a servant of the government. They may reluctantly believe it, but they don't really question that fundamental premise. Americans are predominantly individualists. Europeans, they're group-oriented to a much larger extent than what we are. They identify themselves with some kind of group. It can be religious, it can be an ethnic group, a cultural group, or based on a language. Americans are different. Americans also admire individual achievement. It was very refreshing coming here and realize that here to the United States. Giants of industry, of science, etc. Americans have a reverence for that kind of accomplishment. And I don't mean the guys who are wheeling and dealing in Washington favors. You have read Ayn Rand, and you probably know that she makes the distinction between the true producers and the looters and the moochers on the other hand. We're talking about Americans, the true producers. All the way back from the Edisons and Henry Fords through Sam Walton, Bill Gates today, and Steve Jobs. Those people are truly admired by Americans. But we don't see that in Europe. In Europe, the issue of individual achievement is almost met with resentment and often with envy. The expression, "who do you think you are?" is quite common over there, and you see it to a much lesser extent here. Finally, Americans want to mind their own life. They're self-reliant. Europeans, they are scared to death of not having a government safety net protecting them, and they do almost anything, obey any powers in order to keep that safety net. And keep that in mind, because we're starting to see it here too. In short, one might say that the US has its declaration of independence. European countries, they don't have it, but they could as well have a declaration of dependence. The respect for the individual's unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is a concept almost unheard of it and even less understood in Europe. In the Constitution, the founders gave us the political blueprint for the new world. In the Declaration, as I see it, with its respect for rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they gave us the moral blueprint for the new world. I consider the spirit of the Declaration the essence of American exceptionalism. Now you obviously ask yourself, if we're so different, if we're so great, if we have this great founding, we're so exceptional, we're this country of rugged individualists, of don't tread on me, leave me alone types, how come we're in such a sorry state? How come the number of Europeans in mind that I talked about, they seem to increase year after year? After year, after all, it's not such a big difference between unionized teacher demonstrating on the state capitol in Madison, Wisconsin, and ranch farmers blocking the roads to protect their subsidies. If we're so exceptional, how come we're in not many ways no better off than European countries? How come we're approaching the abyss of fiscal bankruptcy? It seems that we're pretty far from the spirit of the Declaration. Let's take a brief look back in history for the past 100 years and to try to get an idea of how we've gotten to where we are. 100 years ago, Woodrow Wilson was our president. He gave us the first wave of big government expansion, as I call it. He gave us the income tax, we got the Federal Reserve, we got the Federal Farm Loan Act, and a whole slew of other government programs. Now, Americans got a little tired of him, so they elected Warren Harding, followed by Calvin Coolidge. What did they do? Nothing. Nothing was really good compared to what Wilson did. But they really didn't roll back anything. They didn't repeal anything. They just want to slow things down a little bit. Then we got Herbert Hoover, Republican in name only. He got us into the Great Depression, and in 1932 he instituted the biggest peacetime tax increase ever in this country. That's from a Republican president. Well, you know what happens next. Roosevelt, the New Deal, the Red Decade, Social Security, payroll taxes, and a whole slew of other government programs. The war ended. We got the 50s, the early 60s. Pretty good time. It was pretty quiet. Americans prospered. But we didn't repeal much of what neither Wilson nor Roosevelt had instituted, right? Well, then came Johnson. And wham, here's the third wave of big government expansion. The Great Society, Medicare, Medicaid, the war on poverty, food stamps, Head Start, and a whole slew of other programs. Well, Nixon didn't want to be outdone, so he repealed the gold standard. He gave us the EPA, one of the worst organizations out there, administrations to violate our rights. The rest of the 70s saw inflation, and then came Ronald Reagan. Great, right? Yay. Well, hold your applause, please. It's true, we did see some tax cuts and restoring of the belief in America. But at the end of his administration, we spent more money on government than we did when he took the oath. So where were the repeals? Where were the rollbacks? Bush won, ADA, more tax increases, read my lips. Clinton, we had actually a pretty good time under Clinton, believe it or not. Bush 2, baby Bush as I call him. Prescription benefits, TARP. And then we have Obama with the fourth big wave of government expansion. With Obamacare and with TARP 2 and all the other stuff. Microphonically challenged, that's called. Okay, sorry, I get carried away a little bit and then I lose track of my notes here. But the million-dollar question here, well, that should probably be billion or trillion these days. Millions are old-fashioned. Why do we see this repeated search every so often? Wilson, Roosevelt, LBJ, Obama. And why are Republicans never countering it? Never cutting back? There's almost no difference. If history is any indicator, Obama and Pelosi and Reid, they adopted exactly the right strategy, ramming through the healthcare proposal last year. Because you know what? We're upset for a while, but then we forget and get back into our usual daily grind. And at some point or another, we vote the Dems back into the office for some reason. And wham! They slam us with another round of government expansion. Why is that? It's depressing, but why should we believe that anything is different this time? Look at the Tea Party turnout on tax day this year, a week ago compared to a year ago. Yes, it's an off year, and I hope and agree with Mark and the others here that we'll hopefully see a lot better turnout as we get closer to the next election. But you could think that the Dems are already proven right. I mean, who can be bothered with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness when we have Survivor and The Biggest Loser on TV? Seriously, why are we never able to roll roll back? Why do we never see any repeals? Paul Ryan's budget proposal is the perfect case in point. We're only going to spend 40 trillion over the next 10 years, instead of 46 that the president has proposed. And this man is supposedly a champion for limited government. Give me a break. Why are Republican presidents and Congress majorities almost as disastrous as Democrats in terms of disregarding the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? It is as if they've never heard of it, as if the Declaration and the Constitution is some quaint, historic paradox that we have long since thrown on the trash heap of history. Am I making you depressed? Well, I have to thank you for giving me this outlet up here, because that's probably one of the few things that are keeping me from going mad. These soapboxes are greatly underrated as therapy. Yeah. Well, don't despair. I wouldn't be here if I didn't know the answer. I said earlier that in the Declaration and its respects for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the founders gave us the moral blueprint for the new world. The reason why government keeps expanding and expanding regardless of who is in office is that we have not heeded that message. We have not heeded that blueprint that they gave us, the blueprint, the moral blueprint for a new world, as I like to call it. We have not protected the rights of each individual to his life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Instead, we have succumbed to, we have been kind of seduced by, I think, what I call the ABC of old world morality. A, altruism. B, brother's keeper. C, common good. Now, these are not mutually exclusive, they overlap and they have dependencies and all kinds of things, but I really like the idea of having an ABC of old world flawed morality. It's so easy to remember. So if there's anything you'll take with you from here today, it is that ABC, I hope. Let's talk a little bit about each of them, and then I'll mention what I think they have in common. So altruism first, A, that's a big word, but it's important to recognize because it's often used by academics and politicians and other pundits who like to impress us or people with fancy words and who don't really want us to know their intent. The term wasn't around at the time of the funding, I give you that, but it was certainly very popular when Wilson started his first wave of great government expansion. It was coined in the mid-1800s by the French philosopher Auguste Comte, and that is the proper pronunciation. Now right there you should stop in your tracks, all right? Anything French that has nothing to do with food and wine is by definition bad. Do we have any French people in the audience? I didn't think so. They're not into tea parties, they just sip red wine. In Ayn Rand's words, and I quote, altruism preaches that man has no right to exist for his own sake, that service to others is the only justification of his existence, and that self-sacrifice is his highest moral duty, virtue, and value. It can be religiously based, but it doesn't have to be. Hence, it's very popular in Europe, where organized religion has been on the decline for more than 100 years. It is essential to such movements as socialism, Marxism, Nazism, communism, most isms except for capitalism. It can be sacrificed to one class in favor of another, like the bourgeois to the workers. It can be sacrifice of an individual to the nation, like fascism and nationalism, or an ethnic group to another ethnic group, like the Nazis. But it's also at the center of our democracy where we're routinely asking minorities to give up their rights for the sake of the majority, or the other way around. If you've heard the phrase, and Michael mentioned it before in conjunction with Marxism, from each according to his need, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, that is not only the call of the Marxist, but that is the call of the altruist. B, brother's keeper. I think most of you are familiar with this one, so I don't need to dwell too much on it. I just want to say a couple of things. I am my brother's keeper. That teaches that in order to be moral, to be good, we have a duty to take care of the poor, the less fortunate, the family members, etc., without really questioning whether they deserve our support or not. It's kind of a moral imperative. And we'll get back to that a little bit more later. Now, C, common good, also known as the public interest, the good of the community, the good of society, and there are some other goods like that that you can probably think of too. It has served as the moral justification of most social systems. So this goes together very much with the altruism, etc. in history. And so you remember how I said that Europeans are primarily group-oriented, not individualist? Common good is big over there. Politicians and others like to justify a lot of their schemes with the common good, and normally it means that they want to promote their pet projects paid for out of your wallet. However, take notice of one thing: the argument for the common good is not a primary, as I mentioned. It depends on either altruism and or my brother's keeper to really take hold. Now, the common denominator here of this ABC of old world flawed morality, as I call it, is that in essence they teach us that concern for others should be our primary orientation. We're only truly good, truly virtuous, if we place others before ourselves, if we sacrifice our values for the benefit of others. Now then, look again briefly at the programs that I rattled off when I went through the brief history, and ask yourself if any of them may have been enabled by the ABC: the income tax, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps. It goes on and on.
We're going to go on with the second one, but what I wanted to just let you guys know real quick, in case you have to bug out before we're done here, is